The ultimate question, should weightlifters deadlift? We're gonna cover this and we're gonna start right now. So why is this the ultimate question? I think for me personally, as a weightlifting coach, sometimes when I think about deadlifting, I think about powerlifters and I tend to cringe, even though I do train some powerlifters. So let's get over that. Let's pretend that deadlifting's okay. It's not horrible. It's not the worst thing on the planet. Powerlifting's even okay, and it is. So if we can look at it and say, all right, what is a deadlift? That's gonna help us understand how can this apply to the sport of weightlifting? And real quickly, if we just look at what is weightlifting, it's a snatch and it's a clean and jerk, okay? So there's a large amount of force when you're pulling off the floor with a large amount of technique. That's what makes weightlifting so interesting. There's a large amount of speed, right? So you see someone snatch, 200 kilos in the super heavyweight division, and it takes a lot of precision, a lot of speed, a lot of mobility, and a lot of strength. And that has to be addressed. And then we have to look at the clean and the jerk and recognizing that, okay, the deadlift's very, very, very likely not going to transfer to the jerk. But if you look at the clean and what that entails, there's going to be a large amount of weight that you have to pull off the floor. And you have to get to really tight, precise, technical positions once you get into the hip, and then you can make contact and get into that catch position. So I would argue there needs to be a massive strength component in the clean and in the snatch pull. Now, with that being said, what we have to identify then is what is the deadlift, okay? So we know that there's a strength component in the snatch. We know there's a strength component in the clean, in the pulling positions. When we look at what a deadlift is, there is a conventional deadlift, there's a sumo deadlift, okay? So these two positions that we're looking at typically are going to have, the movement pattern will be an upper back that tends to be rounded, okay? So we have a rounded position. We will also see the knees will come back in those specific positions. We'll load the hamstrings, and then a lot of stress gets placed on the lower back. And then a lot of conventional deadlifters actually have a cue of almost falling backwards. So really helping to raise that chest, to get the hips to extend, and to finish that lockout. So if we can identify that position, the deadlift, picking a weight off the ground and getting it to your hip, is a specific type of technique. When we look at it through that technical lens, and you look at conventional deadlift, is this specific type of technique, closer feet, upper back tends to be rounded, we lift with pretty straight legs, and it's a lot slower, and then we'll have that almost fall back position. Then we have the sumo deadlift where we have super, super wide feet, and it's gonna be a much shorter range of motion. If we look at it through that lens, you would argue weightlifters should not be deadlifting. But when we look through the lens of the actual technique, okay, so if you look at a conventional deadlift versus a sumo deadlift, now if we can identify a clean grip deadlift or a clean deadlift. So a clean deadlift would be done with the foot position mimicking the clean. When we look at a snatch grip deadlift, some people will snatch grip deadlift, yours included here, me pointing at myself, with an upper back that tends to be rounded and my butt might shoot up. But if we look at it and then we say snatch deadlift, then what our main focus needs to be is identifying that we want to do a heavy deadlift with a snatch technique. So if we can do a heavy deadlift with a snatch technique and not have our upper back round, not have those positions break down, there will be a strength component that will have a direct transfer. I do believe a conventional deadlift could potentially have a pretty good strength transfer, but the technique could be interrupted in the clean by the poor mechanics that we would see from that upper back rounding. Can lead to some mechanical issues in the pulls of the clean and of the snatch. So basically giving away here that you should be doing some type of clean technique deadlift, snatch technique deadlift, if you have very, very weak pull position. If you're a long-legged lifter, a longer limbed lifter, you very likely do not have to do really heavy clean technique deads or snatch technique deads because you tend to be a better puller. If you're a squat-based athlete, a squat-based Olympic weightlifter, you will tend to have to do them to improve your pulling position off the floor. It's not the only way to enhance your pulling position, but it's a really good way. And now what I want to do is, are there examples of people doing clean technique deads, snatch technique deads? Are there examples of countries using them? And then do we use them here at Garage Strength? And then finally, what would be the progressions to use them? And so I think first of all, we've probably all seen really heavy clean deads, snatch deads done by the Chinese weightlifting team. So there are clearly examples. I also have personally talked with some of the German coaches that have come to the United States here and who have shared their information, where they will try and get someone who is a lifter to try and get to 125 to 130% of their max clean. They want to do a clean grip deadlift at that 130% range. And if that happens, then you will see an improvement in their overall performance. So if you look at Germany, you look at China, they are examples of countries that use those patterns, okay, that use clean grip deads, use snatch grip deads with the technique. I would also, as an aside, argue that most very proficient weightlifters, okay, and I'm going to use our example here where Haley Reichert has used very heavy clean technique deadlifts, snatch technique deadlifts. Weightlifters really struggle to have a rounded back. When they feel their back rounded, they tend to just fail with the weight. So if you are an intermediate lifter or a novice lifter, we just have to be aware that there can be a substantial technical breakdown, and novice lifters and intermediate lifters will tend to pull with a rounded back. So we just have to be aware of that. When we're implementing them into our training, some of the factors that we have to bring up are, what's that strength carryover? And then how can we progress that towards a big peak so that it actually has a good transfer? And some of the stuff that we've done here, using Haley Reichert as an example, she's a 2-time Pan Am champ, world bronze medalist. We've done heavy clean grip deadlifts or clean technique deadlifts up to 127 kilos, which I would always wonder, like, what's the 49K world record in the deadlift? I'd be interested to see if Haley could get close to that. So we would use those a little bit further out from her performance. Now, Haley has clean and jerked 114 kilos as a 49K lifter, so she's extraordinarily strong. Now, that 110, 111 kilo range, 114 kilo range, we should be able to try and get her to about 140 plus kilos, okay, around 140 kilos to do that technical deadlift without substantial breakdown. We've gotten close, not entirely there. I'm just using that number because that has been provided by Germany and their research and what they talk about, and they've sort of hinted that they've gotten some of those numbers from China. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but the way I see it is that there's a clean grip deadlift, okay, or a snatch technique deadlift. Then there's going to be a clean pull or a snatch pull, and the clean pull or the snatch pull will be done, with a shrug. And if we would put a velocity tracker on the bar here, we might see the clean technique deadlift done at half a meter per second or lower. The clean pulls we might see done at 0.8 to 1.1, somewhere in that range. If we understand that a clean is done at like 1.4 to 1.7 meters per second, somewhere in that range, then we're going to see the strength component is going to be executed a little bit slower. So let's say if we're 12 weeks out from a big competition or 16 weeks out from a big competition, what I would recommend is spending 4 to 8 weeks, maybe doing some clean technique deadlifts. If you have a weak point right off the floor, it will help you feel stronger. It will improve your strength off the floor. Focus on the technique. Then the next 4 to 6 weeks, you could do clean pulls. So those clean pulls, and if we're using a velocity tracker, could be done at a certain, 1.2, 1.3 meters per second. Then as we get really close to a competition, now that percentage of intensity might drop to 105% or 110% of that clean max. So if we have somebody who can max 110 kilos in the clean, we might only do clean pulls at 115. And in this case, as we get closer, I would recommend doing, let's say, a snatch pull to a target. So now that speed is going to mimic closer to what you're doing in competition. And you can put a target with a PVC and actually shrug to hit that PVC pipe. So in essence, if we're going to use clean technique deads or snatch technique deads, we should 100% use them. They will be effective. They're going to help with the strength off the floor, but we also need to see how they transfer to the technique. We need to make sure there's no technical breakdown, and we need to see them bridged through using clean pulls after about 6 to 8 weeks. So we can do clean technique deads or snatch technique deads for 6 to 8 weeks. Then we can do another 4 to 6 weeks of clean pulls or snatch pulls. And then we can do another 4 to 6 weeks leading into the peak with snatch pulls to target or even clean pulls to the target. And so all of these things can be used effectively as long as we're strategic with our plan and we're strategic with how we're gonna execute it and we're paying attention to those technical positions. Some lifters who have longer limbs will never have to do a snatch grip deadlift or a clean grip deadlift. So you've just gotta be aware of what are the weaknesses, what are the positions off the floor that we're looking for, and what's the actual technique and the muscles used in that specific technique. If you need help with your weightlifting, head over to garagestrength.com. You can pick up a strength training program to help you become a world-class weightlifter. Because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.